Good. Well, let's start with the stocks, and let's start specifically with Tongaat-Hulett. Remember, this one comes out of the Anglo-American conglomerate, although it has been listed on its own right for quite some years now. It's got a number of different business divisions. The first and most significant is sugar. So it has sugar operations in the KwaZulu-Natal area, which I think people are traditionally familiar with. In addition to that, it also has sugar businesses in Zimbabwe and in Mozambique. We'll talk about those. Then they have a starch business. They manufacture products which are used largely by SAB Miller. So there is a business which manufactures the maize derivative which goes into the beer industry. They also have some interest in glucose and related sort of stuff. And then property development. What's that about? Well, the cane fields, which are located outside of certain regional centres like Durban, like Umhlanga and so on and so forth, can be converted over time. And so they have, over the years, developed in their Moreland subsidiary a series of golf estates like Zimbali and Mount Edgecombe and so on and so forth. So as you can imagine, the uplift in value that you get from taking a farm, provided you can get the ministerial approval to convert it into either residential or industrial or commercial park, is enormous. But it is pretty cyclical and it does take quite a long time. Pretty substantial company though, market cap of 17.7 billion rand. Pretty big player, not in the Aussie 40 with that kind of market cap, but certainly not to be sneezed at. Price to earnings ratio of 12.21, dividend yield of 2.89%. Okay, Chris, overview comments here.
This was spun out of the Greater Anglo Group last decade.
And then split further with
yes,
the Hewlett aluminium business coming out.
And I think, you know, the moment the dead hand of Anglo was taken away from it, and Peter Stauder came in, I mean, he was really fantastic, and he re-injected energy and enthusiasm into this company. But having said that, you know, looking at your preamble there, this is much more of a land company these days, and I think that's where the interest really lies. If you look at a thing called the sugarcane belt, it goes right around the world, and it's a very thin area, and inside of that, sugarcane grows very, very well indeed. And some of the countries you mentioned, things like Malawi, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, they're right in there. South Africa is right on the edge of it. So yes, we produce sugarcane, but not the kind of yields that you get if you're a bit further north in Africa. So and so most of their fields have been, you know, in South Africa, and I think a lot of them, you know, they're being sold off as excess cane acreage, and it's done them very, very well in the past. So I think you have to look at this, as you say, from a very, very different perspective to many of the other companies in there.
Let's have a look at the share price, because that always tells a story. Like I say, 5 years is a good interim. Sometimes I think we should look at 10. So there's a bit of an upward trend there, which is typical of a strong market, although we know that in recent times there's been a little bit of a fall off. That's probably because currently sugar prices are looking a little bit wobbly on global markets, because they tend to follow the oil price, which we know has come down. That's because sugar cane in Brazil, one of the world's biggest producers, gets used to turn into ethanol. So it's a mixture of factors, isn't it? It doesn't tell a particularly positive story. That's quite a nasty fall at the end then.
It is a nasty fall, as you say, Paul. And even those other areas that we're talking about, things like African products, things like the land story, hasn't been enough to ameliorate that fall off there. Yes.
Well, let's tease out a few of the major factors, because this is the largest company, so we can spend a bit more time on it. They have invested heavily in the construction and extension of the sugar estates in the Shinavan province north of Shai in Mozambique. As you say, if you put a broomstick in the ground in Mozambique, it'll grow into a tree. So that's a great place to work. Mozambique, you know, looking better politically, a bit more stable. The Masvingo province stuff in Zimbabwe, though, has been a concern for me, because I see all this capital going in, and then at the same time I'm seeing stories about, you know, ministers rolling up with long black limousines and, you know, wanting to further nationalize operations up in that country. So what can one feel positive about investments in sugar estates in Zimbabwe?
Yeah, no, you're quite right. It's a bit of a mixture. I mean, Mozambique today, although it's been producing an awful lot more sugarcane than it has in recent years, is still a fraction of what it produced in the 1960s and 70s. I mean, so the potential for Mozambique is still absolutely enormous. Zimbabwe, hidebound by many, many political problems, as you say. So depending on the area in which you are invested in Africa will determine your success or not.
Coming back to the property developments in the Greater Durban area. As Durban has moved to the north, there's been fantastic opportunity there, both with regard to residential estates as well as the extension of industrial estates. The new airport is great, that's up there. I don't know how that goes though. Currently, I think it's in a sort of expansion phase again. It went a little bit quiet in 2007, 2008. Ads did anything associated with investments. Right now, I don't know. I mean, sort of KZN in the very short term looks a bit ropey because of the xenophobia things that are going on. Is that going to be a long-term factor? Who knows? Land claims in the area?
Don't think so. Look, I attended a presentation from a chap called Dr. Clive Coetzee from the KZN regional government about a year or so ago, and he talked about the expansion in Durban and the expansion downwards from Richards Bay. And the two conurbations are probably going to meet in the not too distant future. I mean, they're very far apart.
Which would be fabulous for these kind of guys, given their land holdings.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I think of all of the big nodes in South Africa, I think that one in Durban has probably got the greatest potential of all of them, strangely enough. So I think that land is probably going to hold them in very, very good stead.
Okay, but notwithstanding all of that, we've seen a big share price slump, and that's probably because of results and sugar and related sort of anxieties. So for the moment, how are we going to lean with this one, going hot or not?
Yeah, I like it. It's relatively cheap, but I think it may languish for a little while yet. So I'm not hot on this one particularly, although I do like the company for the longer term.
Okay, so I'm going to go with not hot as well on the same sort of concerns. Ordinarily, I don't like to see falls like that.